The hotel room smelled of jasmine and regret, a scent that clung to Evelyn's skin like a second shadow. Every Thursday, she slipped away from her polished life, her husband, her corner office, her lies, and stepped into this sanctuary of truth. Tonight, Clara's laughter, bright and unburdened, echoed from the balcony, pulling Evelyn toward her like gravity. Evelyn stood in the doorway, her heart pounding as she watched Clara lean against the railing, the city skyline glittering behind her. Chicago sprawled beneath them, a labyrinth of lights that mirrored the chaos in Evelyn's chest. She was 32, married to a man who adored her, yet here she was unraveling in the presence of a woman who made her feel alive. "I could stay here forever," Clara said, her voice soft, her blonde hair catching the wind. She was 28, a painter with dreams bigger than her bank account, her hazel eyes sparkling with a freedom Evelyn envied. "Just you, me, and this view." Evelyn smiled, but the weight of her wedding ring burned against her finger. She'd been coming to this hotel for 6 months, sneaking away from her husband, Mark, to meet women who stirred something she'd buried since college. Clara was different, though. She wasn't just a fling, she was a revelation, a mirror reflecting the parts of Evelyn she tried to forget. "You say that every week," Evelyn teased, stepping closer. Her tailored blazer felt too stiff, her life too small. She wanted to shed it all, to step into Clara's world of color and chaos, but the clock was always ticking. Mark was at home, probably sipping bourbon, waiting for her to return from her late work meetings. Clara turned, her sundress swaying as she closed the distance between them. "Then stay," she whispered, her breath warm against Evelyn's cheek. "Stop running back to him." The words cut deeper than Clara could know. Evelyn's marriage was a carefully constructed facade. Mark was kind, successful, the perfect husband on paper. But he didn't know her. Not the way Clara did, with her artist's eye that saw through Evelyn's polished exterior to the woman beneath, the one who loved fiercely, recklessly, in ways society hadn't taught her to name. "I can't just leave," Evelyn said, her voice breaking. "It's not that simple." Clara's fingers brushed Evelyn's jaw, gentle but insistent. "It is. You're just scared." Evelyn wanted to argue, to list the reasons: her job, her family, the expectations that chained her to a life she didn't want. But Clara's touch silenced her, and when their lips met, the world fell away. The kiss was fire and freedom, a promise of something Evelyn had never dared to claim. They spent the night tangled in sheets, in whispers, in dreams they couldn't voice. But as dawn crept through the curtains, reality returned. Evelyn slipped out of bed, pulling on her blazer, her armor. Clara watched, her eyes heavy with unspoken questions. "Same time next week?" Clara asked, her voice light but laced with hope. Evelyn nodded, unable to meet her gaze. "Always." She drove home through Chicago's quiet streets, the city waking up as her secret burrowed deeper. Mark was asleep when she slipped into their Lincoln Park brownstone, the house pristine and cold. She stood in the kitchen, staring at a photo of their wedding day, her smile forced, his genuine. Guilt gnawed at her, but so did the truth. She was living a lie, and Clara was the only one who saw her clearly. The weeks blurred into a rhythm of stolen moments. Every Thursday, Evelyn checked into the hotel, each time with Clara, each time more reckless. She told herself it was just an escape, a way to breathe before returning to her cage. But Clara's laughter, her touch, her belief in a life unscripted, it was changing her. One night, as they lay in the dark, Clara traced circles on Evelyn's arm. "What if you didn't go back?" she asked. "What if we just left? Started over somewhere new?" Evelyn's chest tightened. The idea was intoxicating, running away, leaving Mark, her job, the expectations that suffocated her. But it was also impossible. "I'd lose everything," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Clara propped herself up, her eyes fierce. "You'd gain yourself." The words lingered, haunting Evelyn as she drove home that night. She wanted to believe Clara, to imagine a life where she could love openly without shame. But fear was a powerful anchor, and Evelyn wasn't ready to cut the rope. The next Thursday, everything changed. Evelyn arrived at the hotel, her pulse quickening as she stepped into the lobby. The clerk handed her the key to their usual room, but when she opened the door, Clara wasn't there. The balcony was empty, the bed untouched. A note sat on the nightstand, written in Clara's looping handwriting. "I can't keep waiting for you to choose yourself. I'm sorry. Evelyn's knees buckled. She sank onto the bed, the note trembling in her hands. Clara was gone. The room, once a haven, felt like a tomb. She called Clara's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Texts went unanswered. Panic clawed at her chest. She hadn't realized how much Clara had become her lifeline. Days turned into weeks, and Clara remained a ghost. Evelyn checked the hotel every Thursday, hoping for a sign, but there was nothing. Mark noticed her distraction, her late nights, but he didn't ask. Maybe he didn't want to know. Then one evening, as Evelyn sorted through the mail, a small envelope slipped from the stack. No return address, just her name in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a single photograph, and the sight of it stopped her heart. It was Clara standing on a pier, her blonde hair glowing in the sunlight. She was smiling, but not at the camera, at another woman, someone Evelyn didn't recognize. Their hands were linked, their bodies close, and the intimacy of the moment was unmistakable. On the back, in Clara's handwriting, was a single line. "I found someone who isn't afraid." Evelyn's world shattered. The photo wasn't just proof of Clara's new life, it was a mirror, reflecting Evelyn's cowardice. She'd clung to safety, to the lie of her marriage, and lost the one person who'd seen her soul. That night she sat in the dark, the photo in her hands, and made a choice. She couldn't keep living half a life. She owed it to herself and to Clara to be brave. Evelyn's hands shook as she set the photograph on the kitchen counter, its edges curling slightly from her grip. The image of Clara with another woman burned into her mind, a vivid reminder of what she'd lost and what she'd never truly claimed. She poured herself a glass of wine, but it tasted like ash, unable to dull the ache in her chest. The house was silent, Mark away on a business trip to New York. It was the perfect time to unravel, to let the truth spill out, but Evelyn felt paralyzed. She'd spent years building walls around her heart, her desires, her truth, and now they were crumbling, leaving her exposed. The photo wasn't just a goodbye. It was a challenge, daring her to stop hiding. She wandered into the living room, her eyes catching on the framed pictures lining the mantel. Her and Mark at their engagement party, her and Mark on their honeymoon in Napa Valley. Each smile was a lie, a performance for a life she'd never wanted. She wondered when she'd stop being the woman in those photos, or if she'd ever been her at all. Her phone buzzed, snapping her back to the present. It was a text from her assistant, reminding her of a client meeting tomorrow. Evelyn stared at the screen, the words blurring. Her job as a corporate lawyer had been her anchor, proof she could succeed in a world that demanded perfection. But it was also a cage, tying her to a life that didn't fit. She opened her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She typed Clara's name into a search engine, desperation driving her. Social media profiles popped up, but they were private, offering no clues. She tried mutual acquaintances, art galleries where Clara had shown her work, even the coffee shop where they'd first met. Nothing. The memory of that first meeting flooded back. It was a rainy afternoon in Wicker Park, Evelyn grabbing a latte before a deposition. Clara had been sketching at a corner table, her hands smudged with charcoal, her smile disarming. They'd talked for hours, the world fading away. That was the first time Evelyn felt seen, not as a lawyer or a wife, but as herself. Now, Clara was gone, and Evelyn was drowning in the void she'd left. She picked up the photo again, studying the woman beside Clara. She was tall, with dark hair and a confident stance, her arm around Clara's waist. They looked happy, free in a way Evelyn had never been. The realization hit her like a punch. Clara had moved on, not just from her, but from the secrecy, the shame. Evelyn's phone rang, startling her. It was Mark. She let it go to voicemail, her heart racing. She couldn't face him, not now, not with Clara's words echoing in her head. "I found someone who isn't afraid." Mark deserved better than a wife who lived a double life, but so did Evelyn. She deserved to be whole. The next morning she called in sick, something she hadn't done in years. She drove to the hotel, the place where she'd felt most alive. The clerk recognized her, offering a sympathetic smile as she handed over the key. The room was the same, jasmine-scented, with a view that stretched to the horizon, but it felt hollow without Clara. Evelyn sat on the bed, her mind racing. She'd always thought love was a choice, a series of compromises to build a life. But Clara had shown her it could be more, a fire that burned away pretense, a truth that demanded courage. She opened her phone, scrolling through old texts from Clara, each one a lifeline she'd ignored. One message stopped her. "You're braver than you think. Don't let fear win." Sent weeks ago, after a night when Evelyn had cried in Clara's arms, confessing how trapped she felt. She hadn't responded then, too scared to face the truth. Now it was all she had left. She left the hotel and drove to Clara's studio, a loft in Pilsen filled with half-finished canvases. The door was locked, the windows dark. A neighbor, an older man with paint-splattered jeans, saw her lingering. "You looking for Clara?" he asked. Evelyn nodded, her throat tight. "Do you know where she went?" He shrugged. "Left a couple weeks ago. Said she was heading west, maybe California. Didn't say much, but she seemed lighter, you know." Evelyn thanked him, her heart sinking. California. A new life, a new love. She drove home, the city a blur through her tears. That night, she sat down with a pen and paper, something she hadn't done since college. She wrote to Clara, not expecting a reply, but needing to release the words she'd held back. "Clara, you were right. I've been afraid, not just of losing my life, but of living it. I don't know if I'll ever see you again, but you changed me. You showed me what it means to be free. I'm sorry I wasn't ready. I'm trying to be now." She didn't send the letter. Instead, she tucked it into her nightstand, next to the photo. It was a start, a small act of courage. But the real test was coming. When Mark returned from his trip, Evelyn was waiting in the kitchen, the photo on the table. She didn't know what she'd say, only that she couldn't keep lying. The truth was a storm, and she was ready to step into it. The kitchen light cast harsh shadows across Mark's face as he stared at the photograph. Evelyn sat across from him, her hands clasped tightly, her wedding ring digging into her skin. She'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, but now with his eyes searching hers, words felt like shards of glass. "What is this?" Mark's voice was low, controlled, but the hurt beneath it was raw. He held the photo, his thumb brushing over Clara's face, as if trying to understand the woman who'd upended his world. Evelyn took a shaky breath. "Her name is Clara. I've been seeing her. For months." The silence that followed was suffocating. Mark set the photo down, his movements deliberate, like he was handling something fragile. "Seeing her," he repeated, testing the words. "You mean you're in love with her?" Evelyn's throat tightened. She wanted to say yes, to confess that Clara had awakened a part of her she'd buried, but the truth was messier. "I don't know," she admitted, "but she made me feel something I haven't felt in years. Something real." Mark leaned back, his jaw tight. He was 35, handsome in a classic way, dark hair, steady blue eyes, the kind of man who commanded respect without trying. They'd met in law school, bonded over late-night study sessions and shared ambitions. He'd been her safe harbor, but safety wasn't enough anymore. "How long?" he asked. "How long have you been lying to me?" 6 months, she said, her voice barely audible. "But it's not just about her. It's about me. I've been lying to myself longer than that." Mark's laugh was bitter, cutting through the quiet. "So what? You're gay now? Is that what you're telling me?" Evelyn flinched. The word felt both true and foreign, a label she hadn't fully claimed. "I don't know what I am," she said. "But I know I'm not the woman you married. Not anymore." He stood, pacing the kitchen, his hands raking through his hair. "You think this is easy for me to hear? I've given you everything, Evelyn. A home, a life, a future. And you throw it away for some fling." "It's not a fling," she snapped, her voice rising. "It's who I am. I've been hiding it, pretending to be someone I'm not because I was scared. Scared of losing you, of losing everything. But I can't do it anymore." Mark stopped, his eyes locking onto hers. "Then why didn't you tell me? Why sneak around, lie to my face every week?" "Because I didn't know how." Tears stung her eyes, but she didn't look away. "I thought I could keep it separate, keep you separate. But it's eating me alive, Mark. I'm sorry." He sank back into the chair, his anger deflating into something heavier, grief. "Do you love me?" he asked, his voice breaking. Evelyn's heart cracked. "I did," she said. "I do in a way. But not the way you deserve." The truth hung between them, sharp and unforgiving. Mark stared at the photo, then at her, as if seeing her for the first time. "What now?" he asked. "What do you want?" "I need to figure out who I am," she said. "Without you, without her. Just me." He nodded slowly, his face unreadable. "I need time," he said finally. I can't do this right now." He left the kitchen, the sound of his footsteps fading up the stairs. Evelyn sat alone, the photo staring back at her. She'd expected anger, maybe even relief, but the silence was worse. It was the sound of a life unraveling. The next few weeks were a blur of tension. Mark moved into the guest room, their conversations reduced to logistics, bills, schedules, the mechanics of a marriage on life support. Evelyn threw herself into work, but the office felt like a stage, her colleagues' smiles a reminder of the mask she'd worn for years. She started therapy, a small act of defiance against her own fear. Dr. Nguyen, a soft-spoken woman with a knack for cutting through bullshit, became her lifeline. "What do you want, Evelyn?" she asked in their first session. "Not what you're supposed to want, what you actually want." The question haunted her. She wanted Clara, but Clara was gone. She wanted freedom, but it came with a cost. She wanted to be whole, but she didn't know where to start. One evening, as she walked through Millennium Park, the beam reflecting the city's lights like a warped mirror, she saw a couple, two women, holding hands, laughing without a care. They were young, maybe in their early 20s, their love unburdened by secrets. Evelyn envied them, but she also felt a spark of hope. If they could live openly, maybe she could too. She started small. She told her best friend, Sarah, over coffee. Sarah listened, her eyes wide but kind, and hugged her when she was done. "You're still you," Sarah said. "Just more you." The words were a balm, a reminder that the world might not end if she let herself be seen. But Clara's absence lingered. Evelyn checked her social media obsessively, hoping for a glimpse of her life in California. One night, she found a new post, a painting of a pier at sunset, the colors vibrant and alive. The caption read, "Starting over. Learning to love without fear." Evelyn's heart ached, but she smiled. Clara was free, and that was enough. Back home, Mark was waiting. "We need to talk," he said, his voice steady but tired. "I can't keep doing this." Evelyn nodded, bracing herself. The storm was here, and she was ready to face it. Mark stood in the living room, his suitcase by the door. The sight of it hit Evelyn like a physical blow, but she didn't flinch. This was the moment she'd been dreading, and the one she'd been preparing for. "I'm going to stay with my brother for a while," Mark said, his voice steady but distant. "I need space to figure out what I want." Evelyn nodded, her throat tight. "I understand," she said. "I'm sorry, Mark. For everything." He looked at her, his blue eyes searching for something she couldn't give. "I keep thinking about where I went wrong," he said. "What I could have done differently. But maybe this isn't about me." "It's not," Evelyn said, tears spilling over. "You were good to me. Better than I deserved. But I've been hiding who I am, and that's not fair to either of us." Mark's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He picked up his suitcase, pausing at the door. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said, and then he was gone. The house felt cavernous without him. Evelyn wandered from room to room, the silence pressing against her. She'd spent so long fearing this moment, but now that it was here, she felt free. Terrified but free. She threw herself into rebuilding her life. She quit her job at the law firm, a decision that shocked her colleagues but felt like shedding a skin that no longer fit. She started freelancing, taking on pro bono cases for queer youth, using her skills to help those who reminded her of the girl she'd been, scared, confused, but full of potential. Therapy became her anchor. Dr. Nguyen pushed her to confront the shame she'd carried for years, the voices in her head that told her she was wrong, broken. "You're not broken," Dr. Nguyen said one day. "You're human. And humans get to love who they love." Evelyn started attending a local LGBTQ support group, hesitant at first but drawn to the stories of others like her. There was Mia, a trans woman who'd rebuilt her life after coming out at 40. Leo, a non-binary artist who'd found peace in their identity, and Sam, a lesbian who'd left a conservative family to live authentically. Their courage inspired her, showing her a path forward. One night after a group meeting, Evelyn went to a queer bar in Boys Town. The music pulsed through her, The crowd a vibrant mix of people living without apology. She danced, laughed, felt the weight of her old life lift. She wasn't looking for love not yet, but for the first time, she felt like she belonged. Months passed, and Evelyn began to recognize herself again. She moved out of the brownstone, renting a small apartment in Andersonville with exposed brick walls and a view of the lake. She filled it with color-bright rugs, abstract art, plants that thrived in the sunlight. It was hers, a space where she could be herself. She thought of Clara often, but the pain had softened into gratitude. Clara had been a catalyst, a spark that forced Evelyn to face her truth. She hoped Clara was happy, painting her vibrant canvases under a California sun. One evening, as Evelyn sorted through old boxes, she found the letter she'd written to Clara. She read it again, her words raw and honest. On impulse, she mailed it to Clara's old studio, knowing it might never reach her but needing to let it go. Life moved forward. Evelyn dated cautiously at first, then with more confidence. There was a woman named Rachel, a teacher with a sharp wit and a warm laugh. They went on walks along Lake Michigan, shared stories over coffee, kissed under the stars. It wasn't love not yet, but it was honest, and that was enough. One day, as Evelyn walked home from the grocery store, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from an unfamiliar address, the subject line simple, "Thank you." Her heart stopped as she opened it. "Evelyn, I got your letter. I don't know what to say, except that I'm proud of you. You're finding your way, and that's all I ever wanted. I'm happy here, living my truth. I hope you're living yours." Clara Evelyn stood frozen on the sidewalk, tears streaming down her face. Clara's words were a gift, a closure she hadn't expected. She wrote back a short message. "I'm trying. Thank you for showing me how." As she hit send, the weight of the past lifted. She was no longer the woman who'd hidden in hotel rooms, no longer the wife who'd lied to herself. She was Evelyn, messy and flawed, but finally free. Evelyn stood on the shore of Lake Michigan, the wind carrying the scent of water and possibility. It was a year to the day since she'd received Clara's email, a year since she'd begun rebuilding her life from the ashes of her secrets. The city skyline loomed in the distance, a reminder of the life she'd left behind, and the one she was creating. She was 33 now, her auburn hair a little longer, her green eyes brighter, unburdened by the weight of lies. She'd spent the past year learning to love herself, a process both painful and beautiful. Therapy, friends, the support group, they'd all helped her piece together the woman she'd always been, the one she'd hidden for so long. Her relationship with Rachel had grown, not into the fiery passion she'd felt with Clara, but into something steady, real. They'd moved in together, their apartment a blend of Rachel's books and Evelyn's plants, a testament to a life built on truth. Rachel knew everything about Clara, about Mark, about the hotel room where Evelyn had found and lost herself. And she loved her anyway. Mark had moved on too. He'd sent her a letter a few months ago, formal but kind, saying he'd started dating again. He wished her well, and Evelyn felt a pang of gratitude. They'd hurt each other, but they'd also set each other free. Evelyn's work had taken on new meaning. She'd started a nonprofit with Mia from the support group, helping queer youth navigate coming out in a world that wasn't always kind. Every story she heard, every kid she helped, felt like a step toward healing the girl she'd been, the one who'd thought love was something to hide. One afternoon, as she prepared for a fundraiser, her phone buzzed with a new email. It was from Clara, a rare occurrence since their last exchange. Attached was a photo of a Paintinga woman standing by a lake, her silhouette bold against a vibrant sunset. The email read, "This is for you. I see you, Evelyn. Keep shining." Evelyn smiled, her heart full. The painting was Clara's way of saying goodbye, not with pain but with pride. She hung it in her office, a reminder of the journey that had brought her here. That evening at the fundraiser, Evelyn stood before a crowd of donors, activists, and kids whose lives her work had touched. She spoke about courage, about the power of living authentically, about the beauty of love in all its forms. Her voice was steady, her words raw and honest. Rachel stood in the back, her eyes shining with pride. As the event ended, a young girl approached her, maybe 16, with nervous eyes and a story that echoed Evelyn's own. "I'm scared," the girl said. "I don't know how to tell my parents." Evelyn knelt beside her, her heart aching with recognition. It's okay to be scared, she said. But you're not alone. You're enough just as you are. And you're going to be okay. The girl nodded, tears in her eyes, and Evelyn felt a surge of purpose. This was why she'd fought, why she'd lost, why she'd rebuilt. Not just for herself, but for every person who needed to know they could love without fear. As she walked home with Rachel, their hands intertwined, Evelyn looked at the city around her. Chicago was no longer a maze of secrets, it was a canvas, alive with possibility. She'd cheated, she'd lied, she'd lost. But she'd also found herself. And that was the greatest victory of all. The photo that had broken her heart had also set her free. It had shown her Clara's truth, and in doing so had forced Evelyn to face her own. She wasn't perfect, but she was honest. And for the first time, that was enough. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.